The banks that'll get the best price in 2016 have some core common characteristics that banks that have always sold for big prices have. They need to have a good core franchise, a good core deposit base, a nice low cost of funds that ends into a nice net interest margin, somewhere above 3.5%, possibly even 4%. Acquiring banks need net income. They need to have accretive earnings, and they get that from a bank that has low cost of funds and an ability to generate assets. They need to be in a growth market. They need to show that they've been able to grow. They need to show that they have good personnel and good customer service that'll transform into a culture of the acquirer. That's the number one thing that they want. And if you can show that you have the people that will thrive in a larger organization to an acquirer, then they will pay up for a price of a bank. There's been an uptick and there's going to be a downtick, and I expect pricing on bank institutions to probably remain flat to down for the next year. Here's the reason. If you go back to last year, we had the highest volume of transactions as a percentage of outstanding banks since 2001. That's good news. The demand for selling is there. But on the buy side, the buyers are very picky. Their currencies are not there. They've fallen off in the last 30 days. They're much more skittish about what they can pay and who they can buy. And given regulatory limitations in the market about how active you can be, I expect a price gap to develop for what we had last year, and that to continue throughout 2016. If management, executive management and the board are thinking about selling their bank, some of the most important questions they need to consider are probably a little different than what someone might typically think. The number one thing they need to think about is not what the best price is, but what's the best deal I can get. As it is very much an acquisition type market, it's really good for buyers. It's also very good for sellers, where they actually become the buyer. Because there are many buyers out there that want to continue buying our banks, but if you can pitch the acquiring bank that you want their stock that is undervalued in the market, and analyze that and perform your due diligence where you're actually the buyer of the seller, if you'll think of it that way, then a selling bank can do very well in this market. They need to consider, since the stock market's dropped off from some acquirers, 30, 40, or 50% of their stock, what are the collars in the transaction? How do I protect myself if the stock moves? Do I have an exit? Do I have an out? And then some of the traditional questions of how does the transition go through, liability after closing, what am I responsible for, how do I protect management and the employees, compensation issues, all of those need to be wrapped up in the deal. But I think it really ought to start with saying, I'm not looking for the best price, but I'm looking for the best deal.